Most who endure the absolute worst of mankind, the death camps, do not reach age 100 and declare themselves the happiest man on earth. Yet Eddie Jaku looks back at a century of life spent in the shadow of the gas chambers and chooses to smile. It raises a difficult question. How does a person witness the stripping of their humanity and emerge without hatred? The answer was a deliberate strategy for survival. While others succumbed to the chaos, Eddie relied on three non-negotiable principles that anchored him when the world turned to ash. His story suggests that surviving the darkest darkness requires more than physical endurance. It requires a precise, intentional engineering of the soul. In 1920s Leipzig, Eddie believed he was part of the most enlightened, cultured society in the world. He was a German first, a citizen of a city that inspired Bach and Nietzsche, and a Jew only by tradition. His father, a skilled engineer, taught him that a man is worth more than his bank account. He insisted that the true measures of a life were family, kindness, and the willingness to share a meal with a stranger. That foundation was tested in November 1938. On Kristallnacht, Eddie watched as the neighbors he had grown up with suddenly turned into a mob, jeering and spitting while children were thrown into the river. When the people who shared your streets and your schools can be manipulated into murderers in a single night, the very idea of a civilized society is revealed as a fragile illusion. Eddie arrived at Auschwitz in the dead of a Polish winter. Stripped of his name, his clothes, and his parents, he was now number 172338. The Nazi strategy was extermination through labor, working prisoners until their bodies were depleted into disposable fuel. But Eddie possessed a shield the SS couldn't confiscate. Years earlier, his father had forced him to study mechanical engineering under a false identity, insisting that technical mastery was the only thing no one could take from him. While the massive flow of prisoners was directed toward manual labor and death, Eddie's specific skill set saw him filtered into a tiny group of economically indispensable captives. Instead of hauling stones, he was tasked with maintaining high-pressure pipes and building precision surgical tables. The mastery his father insisted upon became the physical barrier between Eddie and the selection line. Technical skills couldn't stop the cold. In the barracks, 10 men packed into narrow wooden bunks were forced to sleep curled together to survive. In this environment, Eddie relied on his second principle, friendship. He and Kurt refused to become isolated animals. Eddie used his factory access to grind scrap metal into knives, trading them for potatoes to share with Kurt. When Eddie fell ill, Kurt fought through a blizzard to bring him hot soup, even taking a blow from a guard's reticle to do it. In a place where many chose to end their suffering by running into the electrified wire, a friend was the only thing that made the next hour worth surviving. Starvation created a constant, maddening temptation. In the barracks, men would often steal bread from their own neighbors, driven by a hunger that eroded every scrap of empathy. Eddie refused. He maintained a strict moral line. Survival at the cost of another man's life was not survival at all. It was the death of the self. This code was tested during the 1945 Death March. Thousands were forced to walk through a sub-zero blizzard. The penalty for stumbling was instant execution. When they found an abandoned building, Eddie discovered a hiding spot in the ceiling. Instead of taking it for himself, he sealed Kurt inside to save him, then walked back out into the snow to continue the march alone. Eddie realized that survival required more than keeping the heart beating. It required walking out of the camp with his humanity intact. After months of hiding in the forest, the war ended. Eddie was reunited with his sister and with Kurt, the friend he had refused to leave behind. Looking back through the lens of a precision engineer, Eddie viewed the human body as an incredible piece of mechanical design, a system capable of repairing its own wounds and enduring stresses that would shatter steel. But he also saw its limits. This biological machine can function for weeks without food, but as soon as you remove the primary fuel, hope, the system collapses almost instantly. Having survived the attempt to exterminate his people, Eddie made a final choice. He decided to smile every day, transforming his own happiness into a living act of defiance against those who tried to destroy him. Eddie Jaku's life proves that while we cannot always choose our circumstances,
we can choose our response. And if you have the opportunity today, please go hug your mother.